The following program deals with a controversial
subject.
The theories expressed are not the only possible interpretation.
The viewer is invited to make a judgment based on all available information.
The top talents in the comic book business are here to tell everything they know.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Tuesday night, the Industry of Comics, episode number 31. We're in the 30s now, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm here with my two compadres, Jesse James Comics, Dennis from Wonderworld Comics, two longtime retailers, longtime comic book aficionados and collectors, and two very good friends of mine. Jesse, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing awesome. Another good day for us. I bought this about 2 weeks ago, and I forgot I ordered it. But this is from the Chapel Brothers. 1956, I think, is 1956. And so I ordered this because it's actually it's not autograph, but it's a Rin Tin Tin official fan club card, right? And
you might want to send that in for authentication. I think that's actually Rin Tin Tin's autograph.
Yeah, is that crazy or what? So that's my grab of the week.
I like it. And of course, Team Polito tonight with all the Coffin Comics gear. Yeah. Shout out to Coffin Comics. So, and Dennis, how you doing, brother?
Oh man, I'm having record-breaking sales. This time for sports cards. I just bought in, or non-sport card. I just bought in the most amazing collection. Every single Halo limited edition box set for Xbox.
Wow.
So there's like ammo tins, and you pull it open, and there's the game and the booklet. The book was still sealed in this padded packing material, with U.S. Space Marines. And I'm just like, dude, these are amazing. And I start looking them up, and I'm like, wow, these are way cheaper than they should be for as few as I ever see. But I had to buy the whole collection.
Yeah, that's how you do it. That's
it.
Well, I want to say thanks to everybody that hung around in the live chat waiting for us to start. You guys are amazing. We're starting a little early tonight, but there's a reason for it. We have a great guest, and you know what? I'm going to let Dennis introduce our guest.
There's one name to talk about when you start talking about the grading companies and the auction companies and selling comic books and getting the most you could possibly get for comic books. And that name is Steve Borock. And literally the guy wrote every book there is on comic book grading. And there's nobody I want to talk to more than Steve in these times of craziness going on in the comic book world. Amen. So let's bring in Steve Borock.
Steve, thank you for joining us, man.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's really cool. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, this is great.
And congratulations, guys, on your pickups. And I love the coffin shirt. That's freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Man, really cool. Really cool. And like I said, I haven't done a podcast in a while. I've been very busy. I mean, I just brought in that Crazy Ed collection to Comic
Well, first of all, tell them where you're at right now.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'm the senior consignment director for comiclink.com. Probably the best auction house to sell through, and definitely one of the top two, and one that's extremely honest. I would never have joined. And we get insane prices. If you look at what you're showing right now, that Suspense, the gentleman got it from us for, I think, $200,000. $2 million.
Wow.
Not 200,000.
Sold for a record $2 million.
Right. And I don't know why the gentleman chose to sell it through Heritage instead of us. But he just, I think, lost about $1 million selling it through Heritage.
Wow. I just sold this book in a sale about 4 days ago. And it's synchronicity. Here it is, the original cover for the first solo.
Look at that. I mean, that is a piece.
Beautiful.
It's beautiful. I mean, it is so Marvel 70s.
It is. It's wonderful.
It is just brilliant.
How much of this stuff do you actually get to see when it comes in?
That's the problem that is not as fun. right? Because we're located in Maine and Hoboken, New Jersey, I work remote. And so a lot of people send me, it's just the raw books because they can save a lot of money because not only do we pass on our 20% discount to our consigners, we don't want to make extra money. We don't need it. We want to help, the hobby. But at the same time, um, you know, uh, I wouldn't have joined if they weren't great, but I don't get to see the art unless I'm the one picking it up, or I'm the one getting the scans on
Right.
nails,
Yeah.
deals I'm doing. Look at that. Spider-Man 50, 125,000. The last sale was like 80 or something.
Unreal.
Yeah. Yeah.
We do,
Boy,
Steve.
it's
We
crazy.
do an original art show here on the channel where whenever these original art auctions happen, we like to go and look at the original art sales, and I do it with some really good friends, and we're gonna start really keying in on some of the original art sales that you guys are selling, because man, to see some of those amazing pieces and
Yeah.
especially those prices, absolutely unreal.
Today, we just got in. I was working on it for a while. And a very good friend who I've helped a lot told the guy he should talk to me. It's one of the only John Byrne Champions pages, the original art, and it is fresh to market. It has been locked up for 35 years.
Wow.
Got the Angel, Ghost Rider. It is so cool.
I was just talking to one of our local old timers, Rick Santman, and
I love him, man.
Rick's the best. I was just talking to him
He
today.
is such a hobbyist. And
He is
such
old
good
school. It's like
time
Richie.
nature.
It's like Richie from Tomorrow's Treasures. There's just the old timers that do it the old way, and I love and respect them, every one of them. But
And some of them still think of me as the kid.
Yeah, exactly. But he just picked up a Showcase 4 at an auction, and the auction had a stack of old books. And Brian, I'll have to send it to you. And just the top little 1/32 of the upper corner of the showcase was sticking out of the auction picture. And he said 4 of the old timers all spotted it, all traveled multiple hours to this little in-person auction in Ohio. And as they all showed up, I was like, shit, you're here. Shit, you're here. And
I've had that happen before with me.
And Rick went home with it for $4,200, the whole stack.
No.
Yeah, dude.
Oh, well, good for him.
Yeah,
I love Richie. I mean,
yeah.
I knew him before he knew me. He used to set up out of his van in New York, Long Island, Queens, whatever, at the flea market.
Okay.
And I'd be some kid who was looking for, a $2 comic, right? So he didn't remember me, but as you know, Richie is one of the personalities in comics that nobody else has, right?
Dude, I shot a video of him at San Diego doing his old shtick where he's like, now, if this cover was more dynamic, I'd put it in this pile where I'd get maximum out.
Yeah.
But this cover, I'm going to give you a deal on. But I'm going to get you on this next cover, because this next cover, and it's just, I love just watching that man work.
Yeah. Now he first of all, I don't know if maybe Mark Wade, but I don't know. Richie knows more than anybody I've ever met about the content of our favorite comic books, because he loves them. And he could talk all day, as we all know, about it. He's fascinating. And Pam and I love him, and Kathy. We go out for dinners and stuff. And what's really cool is I I don't know if y'all remember, but when CGC first came out, Richie and I are great friends. We've traveled to conventions together, whatever. He's like, I will never use this. And at one point, we got into an argument because he said we were thieves.
Oh,
And I took offense. And he didn't mean it that way. He just,
he's hyperbolic. Yeah.
yeah. And
That's why that's why he and I get along so great, because we're both
Yeah,
just over the top.
right. I mean, look, yeah, we've been friends so long. He turned me on to legal seafood back in the day, when it wasn't all over the place. But anyway, he's just such a good man. And, I am so happy to call them friends.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, you know,
That's the best part
took a long
about this industry is all these friends that you meet along the way, and you mentioned it backstage,
Yes.
that become brothers, that become
Yeah.
close.
especially like Dennis. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. And
um,
and
we'll be friends even if one of us left the house.
Oh yeah, dude. If you and I both retired, we'd still find some bullshit to talk about and try to find a concert to go to rather than a Comic Con.
Right, and
Yeah.
talk about our kids. We
Yes,
always do.
absolutely.
That's what's wonderful. It's not just about comics.
yeah.
Even though it's comics or comic art or fandom, whatever it is that brought us together, friendships are so much more important to me than the
Amen.
hobby.
Absolutely.
And the hobby is so important to me that I've ruined one or two friendships with people who have done the wrong things or whatever. There's just, and maybe Dennis could probably tell you, there might be 5 people I don't talk to.
Yeah.
The rest, if we don't get along, as friends, but we do as hobbyists, that's fine.
Right.
Yeah.
But I first started setting up at my first comic show. It wasn't even called a show; it was called a marketplace. Phil Suling had it the 3rd Sunday or 2nd Sunday of every month. Yeah, that's premature senility setting in, by the way. But
Steve, I just blame
you know-
that on cannabis. So that's
but
my
I
life.
can't.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I just got to be honest.
Yeah,
I should
yeah.
probably have done that. I had a well-spent, misspent youth, but that
Amen.
was a long, long time
But I mean,
ago.
that's the key is as Steve has traveled through this, he makes friends. So every time he lands somewhere and somebody asks me, "Oh, hey, what do you think about Steve's now working over at Lone Star?" And I'm like, "Yeah, dude, Buddy got a fucking steal if he got Steve to leave CBCS for him." And
I
then
love Buddy.
yeah, and it's just like, oh, really? And then it's kind of, what you're like. And this is in the chat. If you're under the age of 40, you're not going to get this. Steve is like the E.F. Hutton of comic books. And
No.
when you say Steve Borock, people are like, huh? What's Steve doing now? Where's Steve going? Oh, he's at Comic Link. Oh, they must have some shit going on over there. Let's pay attention.
Yeah.
And that's who you're like.
I think it's only because I tell my consigners that they're the boss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not. Right. I give them advice and I try to manage expectations, high or low. Because Comic Link is a very honest house. Josh and I have been friends since 97 and he started in 96. I've been very humbled that he's called me his mentor at times. He's built something from a very small idea and a very small company into the powerhouse that, dwarfs almost everybody today, if not totally. We have, record sales without
promotion.
Any
Like,
hanky-panky.
yeah.
Well, we'll say you don't have anyone named Mr. Pink bidding on a lot of your high-end items. Is that what we're saying?
Well, no, it's just we pay a lot of attention during the auction to anything we think is shill bidding,
Right.
and we cut it off or knock out the bid.
Yeah.
We, want to make sure that we protect the hobby, the consigner, and the buyer, right? It's a trifecta that can't lose.
No.
Well, it's what
I-
Jesse and I. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Right? No. Go ahead.
No, it's what Jesse and I talk about all the time. You have to be a game warden for your hobby.
Yep.
You can't allow poachers to come in and start killing the low-hanging fruit,
Yep.
because that's
Right.
eventually going to catch up to the rest of the hobby. That's why I
right,
call
that's-
out a lot of
you know,
these middlemen.
Yeah, to me, that's like the new 9.9 pre-screen. I would never allow it when I was running CGC or CBCS. If you look at what is it, GPA, right? George is a great guy, fantastic. I have nothing bad to say about George, of course. But the minute there's a 9.9 on the census, these 9.8s crash. And most of the time, you can't tell the difference between a 9.9 and a 9.8. And, I never loved the 10.0 grade until I got to understand it better. And if you look at my tenure at CGC and CBCS, you'll see that there was not a lot of 10s or 9.9s, unless it's like one of the Grimm fairy tales by Zenoscope that, is a hard stock cover. It's perfect. Those, but, at the end of the day, if perception wise, if somebody sends in 25 books for 9.9 pre-screen, and there's a certain reject fee by any company, right? I'm not bashing CGC. I just don't love the decision, right?
There's certain things that have to go along with that. And there's been so many great people in the YouTube sphere who have been talking about this. If you're going to do these 9.9s and you've got a Bible by which you grade, the Matt Nelson book, you better goddamn have parity along the line with everything else. If you've got a 9.9 with 4 different visible ticks that you've put in the grader's notes, and your own book that you wrote says that shouldn't be a 9.9,
but they won't put grader's notes on, I think, 9.8s and above.
Oh no, they've got grader's notes on some 9.9s now.
Oh really? That's it.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten a 9.9.
Okay.
And that's okay.
Well, and that was one of the things that I always said about you. So I actually just had my feed pop up from Baltimore 9 years ago. And that's when I remember that first submission I did with CBCS and you at Baltimore in 2015.
That's right. I forgot about that.
So I dropped off a mega load of books, 40 copies of Saga #1. And I knew CBCS's credibility that instant. Well, not that instant, but when I got the books back. I got 39 9.8s because these things were pristine. They were bagged and boarded the second, and I got 194. And the grader's notes on that 9.4 said interior page folded. And I was like, get the fuck out of here. You guys opened every book, you inspected every page, and I didn't get 199 out of the whole bunch. And since then, I've never gotten a 10 from CBCS.
No.
I've only gotten maybe 5 to 7 9.9s in the entire, and I'm one of their biggest champions.
Yeah,
I'm one of their. So you'd think they'd be
you're a
shilling me
large
out
submitter,
10,
No,
I get
but
9
it's done
4s.
blind. So
Yeah.
I mean, if it's done above board is done blind.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Right.
that's the thing. I do all of my business like a Vegas dealer.
Yeah.
I show my hands. There's nothing up my sleeves. And that's the way CBCS always acted with me. And that's the way you've always acted the entire time I've known you, decades. So that's where I came from.
You know, I have a quick question here. Since you guys are talking about tradition, culture, I started in 1982 in a comic book store. And when people were bringing in comics, it was never really about value in the 80s because people really didn't really understand value. So it's always the sentimental value. Always been in my family for a long time, 30, 40 years.
Oh, I get you.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. So there wasn't really no one really came in as, and again, I'm 12 years old running a comic book store. So again, that's a whole different story. But no one really came in asking, how much is this worth? No, hey, this has been in the family. We don't collect comics and all that. In this day and age, when you're dealing with all these collections, is sentimental value have any value, or is it just straight value?
You know, it's weird. We covet what we love, right? Usually what we grew up with, especially in comics.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I mean, look at the value of a Hulk 181 for the decade of people before me, right? It was in my 50-cent bin until just after Giant Size X-Men 1 came out, right? I had no, I guess, love for that book. I mean, I appreciate it now, of course, for the key that it is. I mean, 80, 81, and 82 as well, you know. But it's all generational, okay? So one of my mentors and historians of comics was one of my best friends, John K. Snyder III, that great artist. His father ran Gemstone and Diamond, right? He loved the Yellow Kid, Palmer Cox Brownies. I mean, stuff that I find fascinating about the history of our hobby, but doesn't do much for me. I mean, I've tried to read the Platinum Age section in the Overstreet Price Guide. Once again, does nothing for me, but I'm not 110 years old or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, I loved Captain America as a kid. I mean, the communist issue, Steve Englehart and Buscema will always be in my mind. And not only that, but it's a picture frame cover.
Yeah, I love those. Yeah.
Right. And when I finished my high grade run of silver, I sold it and bought up all this Golden Age stuff. And of course, I went for Captain America first. You know, I've been very fortunate that I switched at a time where silver was super hot and gold was still, you know, reasonable, believe it or not, unless it was a super geek. You know, I mean, look, even then, though, back in the day, Action was affordable. I've owned two, but they were worth about $100K back then. You know, if I put them away and forgot about them, you know, I could retire.
Oh, yeah.
Which, of course, I never would. I will always be here. I've always said I'll die on the convention floor. It's my life. It's like I said, besides friends and family.
Yeah.
It's right there. And then there's music, which I just love lyrics. I mean, the Grateful Dead taught me how to be a good human being through their lyrics when I was a young and dumb teenager and could have went the other way as some of the people I grew up with did. And with you know, not understanding that basically peace, love, and understanding, as Nick Lowe wrote.
Did you get a chance to see any of the Sphere footage yet, or have you gone to any of those shows? Did you see they went and played at the Sphere in Las Vegas?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were talking about comics.
No.
Well, I don't like Slow and Company, Dead and Company.
Yeah.
I love this band J-Rad. Joe Russo's almost dead. They can't write a song, but they play better than the Dead ever could, and they change it and they make certain songs their own. The other night I watched an encore of The Morning Dew. It was 20 minutes long. It didn't stop. It was a roller coaster, and it's one of the greatest lyrics. It's based on an old blues song, but Dead and Company, I thought kind of sucked.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I mean,
and we thought we were going to hit Unfiltered when we were talking about the recent controversies. We're in Unfiltered now when we're talking about Grateful Dead.
Well, before we continue, ladies and gentlemen,
sorry.
Before we continue, you brought it up, Dennis. We're going to get into Unfiltered time. Let's take this quick 10-second intro and get it out of the way.
Yo, let's do this.
Valuable commodity I know of is information. Wouldn't you agree?
All right. Well,
Steve had to go take care of
We
something.
scared him. We
We're in
scared him off
Unfiltered.
on Unfiltered.
Yep. We are going to get into Unfiltered, you guys. As soon as he gets back, he had to go take care of something. You never know who's going to show up at the door. It could be somebody you love, and you have to go say, I love you. So that being said, I see everybody in the chat. We are going to get into the all the controversy with the lawsuit. We are going to get into PSA. We're going to get into CBCS. But when he gets back, I really want to ask him about the starting of CGC and what it takes to start a grading company. Because Jesse, as you put it, it's one of those things that we don't know what it takes to start a grading company. Do you have to have a guarantee from outside body looking in?
Yeah.
So that's very interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's what keeps it so much of a small group to do it. So
Yes. All right, back from Unfiltered time. Steve, I want to ask you, no worries, man. Hey, family first and friends second.
It, baby.
Hobby and then
family
music.
and friends first.
There we go.
Dennis.
Yeah. I want to ask you, what does it take to start a grading company? And the reason why we ask this is because, we hear about things out there, a CGC, a guarantee. And people think, does this company have some outside body looking in on them to make sure that guarantee is held? What does it take to start a grading company?
Well, I mean, that was a double question, I guess. Let's talk about ethics.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's one of my biggest things in the hobby. I have mentored many people because I was mentored by many people. And the ethics are what keeps our hobby going and keeps the friendships going. Who watches The Watchmen, right?
Yeah.
What I did was I kind of turned them down at the beginning. I was like, you can't put comics in plastic. And I guess I was on the top of the list of people that the dealers and collectors recommended. So I just got lucky, right? But at the beginning, they were so great. They let me do, I said I needed to hire the right team. restoration has to be detected 99% of the time, or 98. I mean, we're humans. We all miss something. And when I see that some grading company missed a tiny dot of color touch and people are raging about it, I just laugh. I'm like, that's happened to me, I mean, during CGC and during CBCS, right? Or in my collecting career. Uh, if you don't make a mistake, you're not human, right? I always say, and I've said many times, I'm sure some of these people are sick of hearing it, that the only time you win 100% of the time is in fantasy land, and we don't live there. But as to starting a grading service, I will never ever do it again. I started CDCS because after myself and Mark had left, Mark Haspel, who's the one I picked as my second in command, not just because he might be one of the world's top restoration experts. He's a fantastic grader, and he's faster than I am at grading and spotting restoration. My daughter does call him Uncle Mark. Well, just like a comic link, my daughter calls Josh Nathanson, Uncle Josh. But I digress as usual. But it took people yelling at me at a diamond gemstone summit. People who liked me. Rosansky threw down his notebook and stormed out saying, "I'd never use this from you carpetbaggers." Well, Mark and I weren't carpetbaggers, right? We've been around a bit. But Mark was young and smart, and I like young talent when you're hiring, right? First of all, you learn from each other, which is important. And second of all, if I drop dead, he can take my place, right? But so it was a daunting task, from designing the holder, which originally they said they wanted to make something that was completely sealed and unopenable. And I said, look, that's not going to fly. This is supposed to be about grading and protecting the hobby, not to have something enshrined.
Amen.
That's what my thinking and Mark's thinking was at the time. By the way, Mark was so honest that this big New York outfit called the owners of the Certified Collectibles Group and told them not to hire him. I had lunch with them, and I said, "Let me guess, it's these people." And they're like, "Yeah." I was like, "Well, that's because they don't want somebody who can't be bought."
Mm-hmm.
And what was nice about Mark was, let's say I was in trouble or something, and I decided that I would go rogue. Mark would be there watching me and say, "You can't do this." So that's the kind of people you want to put in place, right? But the stumbling blocks of selling it to collectors wasn't as hard as selling it to the major dealers and the convention dealers and whatnot. I mean, they were raging against us in Comic Book Marketplace, which I love. I mean, Gary Carter was great. I mean, what a publication that was. At the end, it got political, and of course, it's kind of gone. But they never mentioned my name or Mark's name. So they were just raging against the machine, if you will. They didn't want this Mercedes. They wanted a horse and buggy, right?
Isn't there a story from that first show where people started getting CGC books back, where half of the old time dealers were just immediately cracking them open because they didn't agree with the grade you guys got, and there was a sound of all of these books cracking and these piles of cracked cases and garbage cans or something?
Well, I'm not going to name names, but when they got back a purple label, which people are calling what? Plod, purple label of death.
Right.
They would crack it out and then put it back in a Mylar on their wall or in their box, and they wouldn't say it was restored. That's what we were trying to stop, and we stopped so much of it. I mean, I hear all the time, there's a scandal, right? Think about it. What was Jerry Ross at 1 Million Comics doing to so many people, right? What is Greg White still doing today to so many people?
For the people in the chat, can you tell us a little bit about those, just so everybody knows?
Well,
1 Million Comics is out of Toronto.
I think they sold
Yeah.
it. Robert Crestall and Jerry Ross, but I bought a book from them when I was young. It was, I think, a Spider-Man 15 and like VG, right? I needed it at the time, and I paid for it. Took forever to get it, but when I did, it had color touch and a tear seal. And at that point, I kind of knew what I was doing, but I didn't know everything. I called them right away because they had a 7-day return policy, right? And I said, it's, restored. The first thing I heard from Jerry Ross was, no, it isn't, right? I was like, how do you know? He's like, I check every book. I said, 1 Million Comics, and you check every I just kind of like threw it back in his face. He said he'll replace it, but I had to FedEx and pay for the FedEx back
Hurdles.
to Canada. And he would send me on his dime, which was still BS, a better copy. And I got an unrestored copy, but I got like a 2.5. I ended up, telling everybody I could what happened to me. It wasn't worth the money I paid through FedEx and everything in the hassle. I just gave it to a friend. I didn't care. He didn't care it was restored. He just got a free copy of Spidey 15, low grade, and back then it wasn't worth, anywhere near what it was doing.
Right.
But then there's like Greg White, and I hope he sues me. I'd like to, I would like to, get him on the stand and all the people he's ripped off, but he's still around today. It's not right.
Is Greg White the guy who was trimming the books?
Oh no, that was Danny Dubček, and we helped put him even more underground.
Yeah.
But in a roundabout way, Mark Zaid, Josh Enton, these great comic collectors and hobbyists that are lawyers, and the CGC chat boards, which did amazing detective work.
Unreal, those chat boards.
We nailed this guy for not paying child support.
Wow.
And so we were able to prove that Danny Dubček was using the name Richard Coos. I think it was his stepfather's name. So I guess he had a bank account there. And but when the court found out that he wasn't paying child support, of course they dug into his finances.
Yeah.
And we were able to put him either, out of business with most people,
Yep.
but he's still on eBay. I've heard under a new name.
Well,
Of
and
course.
this goes to what my big question was. Jesse wanted to know how you get into starting the company. What is the purpose of needing to grade comics? And that is one of the big purposes. Was there was so
Right.
much fuckery going on in this hobby
Sure,
prior
look at
to
Jay
to third party
Maybrook,
eyes.
Jay Maybrook from Sparkle City was a complete thief. I mean, he hurt his partner, who was one of my dear friends, Joe Renault. He's a great seller. He's
Yeah.
semi-retired, but wonderful guy. We talk about movies mostly. But Jay crashed and burned Sparkle City and then ripped off Steve Jeppy, who ended up buying his company. He was selling Jeppy's books for cash. I didn't know at the time. I bought a 9.2. Well, it's graded 9.2 today. I didn't own it when it was graded. Sensation #1 for cash and $4,000. And then he would report to Jeppy that, oh yeah, there was some restoration. We had to sell it for $2,000, and he was spending the money on blow and hookers, and there was so much crazy stuff that went on before certification that I'm really humbled and honored that I had a part in chasing a lot of these people out of the hobby. Now, where there's money, there's always going to be greed.
Amen.
And when there's greed, there's always going to be thieves. We can't stop it all, but we can minimize it. But when somebody goes to Greg White's booth and looks at an AF-15, and it's an 8.0, and the guy is offering it for half the price of a graded 8.0, well, now maybe you should think about why. They come back to him and say, oh, we just got this graded. Not only is it not an 8.0, it's a 7.0, but it's restored. And he's like, I don't believe them. Sue me. I don't care. Because who's going to take the time and the effort to be kept in court?
Right.
Over.
And that's what they're hoping on. That's what these scammers hope for.
Right. Absolutely. And, I've given many, I don't know if it's called testimony or whatever, that this so-and-so got ripped off by so-and-so. And there's a pattern. It's not just a one-time thing. Now, if you buy a book from somebody, it's raw and it has some restoration and they didn't know it, it's going to happen. Dennis, it's happened to you.
I had a Aquaman #1 that I sold to Albert Stoltz.
I love Albert.
And Albert gets it home and counts the pages, and there was an ad page missing. I didn't do the count because I count the book, not the pages at that era.
Yeah, but now you can hold a silver or Bronze Age book in your hand and go, there's a page.
You can feel it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. People think I do a magic trick when that happens.
Yeah. and it's like, dude, you can't fuck a guy like Al Stoltz in this fucking business. Al, send it back. Total refund. Sorry for the fucking problem.
And it's happened to him.
Yep, absolutely.
Like once again, we are human.
Yes.
Everybody. Otherwise, everything would be perfect.
Do you feel that the customers are a little bit more educated now on their purchases?
Absolutely. The chat boards at CBCS and CGC, certain YouTube videos like this one, or podcasts, they want to help everybody.
Right.
Our hobby will only survive if we keep mentoring those that come before us once again. it should be the love of the comic. I hate that there's 10 variants of a comic book because it kind of tells a newbie, if you will. That's a horrible way of saying it, but somebody who loves our hobby and now starting to collect / invest instead of just collecting where they're spending real money, right? We've chased so many big people out of our hobby because thieves took advantage of them.
Yeah.
Right.
Look at Jay Perino. He came in willing to spend more than anybody. I mean, he offered huge, stupid money for the Mile High Action 1 and the Allentown Detective 27. But my friend was such a huge collector when I called him, because I figured I had to. I never made calls for people looking for books when I was at CGC, but this was such, to me, the craziest sum of money that I had to call my friend. And I said, look, Jay's willing to buy this, and I had to call you because it seems like a crazy price. And he was like, well, Steve, it is. It's an incredible price. He goes, but, there's 2 reasons I just don't want to sell now. And I said, well, hey, man, if you don't mind, I'd love to know this because, to me, it would have been a done deal. But such a hobbyist and fanatic and collector that he said, if I sell them, I would want to buy them back, and I would probably have to pay more.
Yeah.
And I respected that. And I said, well, what's the second reason? Because, I'm not rich. I make people rich, right? That's what I do. But he said, and it blew my mind, he said, and also it would need to be a life-changing sum of money. Now, this is, I think, 2001. $5 million to me today is a life-changing sum of money. I mean, literally, my heart jumped in my throat. I was like,
Yeah.
But look, nobody has a crystal ball, but he was right.
Yeah.
He is probably the largest Batman, Superman collector in the world. He has 2 Batmobiles, one from the TV show, one from the movie. He has to drive them around town at times just to keep them in good shape.
Yeah.
So it's kind of crazy. But when you see his collection of memorabilia, it's every piece of Batman and Superman memorabilia, along with Justice League, but it's, I would say it's probably complete. George Reeves' costume, Michael Keaton's costume. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
True hobbyist, and it always has been.
Yeah, he cares for the hobby. That's an important thing.
Yeah.
You need.
Well, it's about preserving our heritage.
Yeah.
Exactly. And once again, I always tell people, collect what you like and you can afford.
Yes.
Because I've watched too many people crash and burn with their so-called investing, or, I'll grab this, but I'll pay you in 6 months. And the guy actually had a good reputation. I mean, I've had people let me pay over 2 years, but some of these people crash and burn, and then they have your book and you have
nothing,
a piece of it.
Yep.
It's horrible.
You love the hobby so much that not only did you create this great thing help create this great thing with CGC, you decided it was so good you had to do it twice. and you go over to CBCS. I mean, there's a little stops in between the way, but I want to talk about CBCS because I want to know what it was like doing it a second time. Was there a lot of thoughts in your head that you said, okay, these are things that we have to do differently, or was it just because you said,
yeah.
Okay,
I mean, there were so many things. First, it was that I don't believe in monopolies.
yes,
It's not healthy for anybody, right? And PGX was ripping people off knowingly. They weren't not just inept. If they were inept, I might have been, well, got to let them grow.
yeah,
Because, even we at, CGC had made mistakes. But I introduced the 0.1 and the 0.3 grade because if a cover for Captain America #1 is selling for $25,000, it shouldn't say NG, no grade, cover only. You should let it have points because people use a registry, which I always hoped CBCS would do. I don't know what they're doing now, but it's been many years in no registry, which has hurt them because CGC has a registry. And so people compete for the better grades to have a better position, and everybody wants to be #1. I mean, we all want to be #1 at something.
yeah, of course.
I'm a #1 fool, but other than that, there was a lot of stuff I put into place, like the point system. Every time you spent $1, you got a point, right, Dennis? Yeah.
I cashed in $1,000 worth of points like a couple months ago, and I was like, holy shit, that's a lot of free books. I hadn't cashed them in forever.
Right. And we were cheaper than CGC at the time. Yeah. Remember, our first 3 years were gangbusters.
Oh, yeah.
My partner... anyway, we had to sell to Beckett.
Come on, you put it in the chat on that video. Let's go ahead and spell it out.
Well, he didn't have the money he said he did, and his investors weren't ready to keep going. I told him at the beginning it would take 2.4 million because that's what I was told it took CGC to open. I was pretty close, actually. It was a little more, but whatever. But I also told him it took CGC 5 years to make $1.
Yep.
Without the company's backing after laying out not just 2.4 million, but more money to keep it going.
Right.
It would have failed. And so we had to sell to Beckett. And I got really kind of screwed in the deal because if I wasn't on board, Beckett wasn't going to buy it. And my partner is a great friend.
Friends and family.
But the people who worked for me meant a lot.
Amen.
I wanted the hobby to keep going. Beckett went their own way, and then eventually so did I.
Yeah.
We can agree to disagree, but I don't need to work for you.
Yeah.
Right.
And you landed in multiple great places, and where you're at now at Comic Link is like you said in the beginning of the show, one of the best when it comes to what they do.
Yeah, I mean, look at the prices we're getting.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Yeah.
I have people leaving other places in droves to work with me because they trust me and they trust Comic Link.
Yeah.
And the people at Comic Link, like Douglas, John, Ross, everybody. I mean, I'm sorry if I've left people out. Anyway, uh, Josh has always been honest, always. I mean, to a fault
Yeah.
sometimes, to his detriment, where he's lost money. The gentleman I know owes him probably, $90,000 for the last 20 or 15 years. It's not right.
Yeah.
But you can't sue somebody who doesn't have money.
There's a really good question in the chat from the 99 Newsstand, and who's another great content creator and collector in this game, and he asked, "Can anything save CBCS now?"
Sure, Beckett. I mean, they just need to implement the correct stuff. And my biggest problem with Beckett and CBCS when I was there was they let go of some of the programs I initiated that would help collectors. They stopped most advertising. And by the way, without Gemstone Diamond, Steve Jeppy and J.C. Vaughn, Mark Huseman, we would not have had the start we had.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and Josh was a big supporter of you guys too.
Oh, Josh, he got it. That's what I'm saying. This guy is so smart.
Yep.
He makes me look like a dummy. And
he also
I'm
loves
not
the hobby.
Bright as gold, but
he also loves the hobby. Yeah.
God. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's why we became, great friends right away. We had dinner once a week at my house every night for like a year and a half. He was like my daughter's first heartbreak. She was like,
when he had the mohawk.
Huh?
When he had the mohawk.
Josh?
Yeah, Jeppy.
No. I'm talking about Josh Nathanson, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. We were two different Joshes.
Oh, yeah.
Right. You were talking about Josh
Jeppy.
Nathanson.
Jeppy, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Josh Jeppy's a great guy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry. I was talking about Josh Nathanson.
Yeah.
Josh is a wonderful person. Cares about our hobby. Cares about what I hate people calling it, the industry.
Yeah.
But once there's a lot of money to be made, it has to be a business to Steve Jeppy and Josh and family and or even Comic Link and Heritage, right?
Yeah.
When there's millions of dollars passing through every month, I guess it's a business, right? But I treat my consigners like I'm a hobbyist and not out for the money. And I'm not. But don't get me wrong. I need to make a living. I need to feed my family. I need to house my family, right? But I don't need that extra dollar. And I don't need it, especially if it's done wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that we hear a lot about is when it comes to collecting, especially now, is people are trying to compare the card industry and the comic industry all the time, and I think that is such a problem. It's apples and oranges.
Exactly, and that's why when we first discussed subgrades so early on. I didn't like it. Wes didn't like it. I think Steve Ricketts didn't like it. So when all the King's Horsemen, all the King's Men couldn't put Humpty together again, right? It got dropped. I know from, or I kind of know from talking with people that West and other people worked very hard when they were asked to do it again after I had left. And Beckett told them, nope, doesn't work. Because it's so different than a card.
Yes.
a card is so two-dimensional, even though it is a three-dimensional object. It's
Well,
still
right. I mean, we
two-dimensional.
call it a two-dimensional object compared to a
Right.
three-dimensional
But
comic.
a comic book
because you can open it up and
a comic book is so many levels more.
Right.
You would almost
So-
need 8 grades to really encompass a comic book rather than just 4.
right. Well, I believe it would probably be 10.
Yeah.
And do you want that? This label, and it's just like all these numbers that you can't make sense of.
Yeah, I want to shout
Right.
out Northeast Ohio Sports Cards and Comics, who's in the chat. He says subgrades are
Hey.
pointless when you already have grader's notes, and that's a great
Exactly.
yes.
Well, and
Right?
and Steve was the guy for the graders notes because you guys gave him for free on Jump
Right.
Street. And
Right.
it took CGC another 10 or almost 8 years, just in the last 2 years, before they even started giving them out.
Well, because I left.
Right.
Right. No, sorry. Because I left, they started charging.
yes, yes,
Right.
yep.
Or you had to have the membership or
Mhm.
whatever. I don't believe that. I've always said this. Dennis will know this. That if I take my car to a mechanic that I trust, and I tell him that, like, here, this needs to be fixed, and he goes, cool, and he says it'll be about $600. I get the bill, and it's $625. Like, guy didn't lie. And I said, so what'd you do to it? And he says, well, you got to pay me extra, to know that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Now, I don't care if there's no notes on 9.9s, 9.8s, or 10s. But there should be a single note at least for a 9.6. But page quality is already noted on the labels,
Yeah.
right? So that doesn't have to be in the grader's notes.
Yeah.
But when you're looking at a 7.0, right, which is one of the 6.5 is maybe the hardest grade to figure out. Mid grades are tough because the look of the book might be great, the defects might stink, or the defects might be fine, but the look of the book isn't. It's not just a science grading; it's also an art, right? So Dennis or any of you guys, right? I'm sorry. I know Dennis so well. I'm sorry.
No,
You
no,
guys are
no.
great.
No. Real
I'm
quick,
being rude.
No, real quick, Steve. I want to mention something in the chat because people are asking what subgrades are, and I want to explain to real quick what subgrades are. So for those of you guys that don't understand, and this is why we brought up the cards and comics are not
Yeah, well,
the
you're
same
doing
thing.
that. I'm going to say goodbye to my daughter.
Of course,
I'll be
of
right
course. A subgrade in the card industry is this, Adam. And what it's hard to explain because I know you're blind, but the way that Beckett grades their cards is they give grades to centering, edges, corners, and the surface, and you get individual grades for each one of those on your label. So, for example, the overall card could be a 9.5 gem mint. And the reason that it didn't get a 10 is because the surface was a 9, everything else was a 9.5 or something like that, right? Or the subgrades let you know in a card what was kind of the reason that you didn't get a higher grade or what was keeping you back. What was the worst thing? Was the centering the biggest problem? Was the edges the biggest problem? Was the corners the biggest problem? And that's what subgrades are. And when it comes to giving subgrades in comics, it's not necessary because of what Northeast Ohio Sports Card said.
And let me extrapolate on that, Brian.
Yeah.
I was a firm believer in Beckett as my grading company, much to Neo in the chat's chagrin. But I always loved it because I would get back a Charizard and it would say 9.5 corners, 9.5 centering, 8.0 edges, and surface 5. Well, shit, I didn't realize you had to clean the surfaces. So I then knew, because there was no grader's notes from PSA. There was no grader's notes from Beckett if you didn't get the quads. So that would tell me, oh, crack this bitch open, rub it with the microfiber cloth, because there's something on this cover that is bringing that surface down. And sure enough, you'd get an 8.5 or a 9 when you sent it back the next time.
Yes.
But I understand what the
That's
chat's saying.
different than washing cleaning.
Yes.
And it can shrink a cover. If I'm correct, it's Golden Age is shrinks it up and down a little bit,
Yeah.
and Silver Age is
Width.
right and left, but really just the left. I mean, you can't see it on the spine, of course.
Yeah.
But I think cleaning is not considered restoration anymore, and I consider it restoration.
Well, there's a big there's a lot of people talking about that. Yeah.
Moisture on a
always
comic
have
book, and
those-
I feel you've wrecked it. You've wrecked the original integrity.
Yeah.
Not just that, but with some of the techniques that are coming out now, it's almost impossible to tell.
Yeah.
Right. There was this one large dealer back in the day who I always said didn't meet a book he didn't want to clean. And it wasn't disclosed because back then restoration was being pumped as good, as opposed, and restoration isn't bad. Please don't get me wrong on that. I believe in conservation, especially.
Yes.
Right? I would remove rusty staples in a second. Look at that Action 1, man. You know, I don't know how it got the 9.0 after we
Well,
graded
the
it.
part about a rusty staple
Staples
is
got worse.
a rusty staple will keep rusting.
Right. And
it's going to slowly eat away the holes that are through that book.
Right. And it's going to ruin the book. Ooh, we don't want that. Conservation is a good thing if it's fully disclosed. And that's why we made it a different color label at the beginning. But people stopped looking at restored books because they said, oh, that's a purple label. I want to go for the blue. Or even the qualified grade. You know, that's a qualified grade. I want a blue one. But what they didn't realize is that if they checked the price, it was a lot lower and affordable. So the two Action 1s that I actually owned, and I was a purist, I still bought them with minor restoration. Not minor, small amount, I should say, of restoration.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's an Action 1, right? And it was spine split sealed, which would have gotten worse. It was cleaned, so I wasn't in love with the colors. And it had a tiny bit of color touch, if I remember correctly. Both of them actually were about the same. But this was, the 90s, right? I didn't mind paying the correct price, and when I sold them for the correct price. And what's wonderful about restored, professionally restored books, is that let's say somebody's never going to have a lot of money, but they can't wait to get their hands on a Fantastic Four #5, the Doctor Doom issue, which is hot right now, right? Because the movie stuff. But Doctor Doom's always been awesome. Anyway, they can then afford to buy a good-looking copy that they can actually read without worrying about much damage at all, and they can get it for sometimes 25% of the price of an unrestored.
50 sometimes.
Yeah.
50,
Oh no,
50%.
I meant 75.
Okay.
I was
Got it.
right, and that's why I said sometimes, because most of the time you're right. It's about 50.
So the big thing in the chat, and it's the big thing that I've been curious about since San Diego, and it's along with what you were saying about your reputation and your name travel through your entire history. So when they announced that Mark Wilson was going to be the head grader, a lot of the old timers came out of the woodwork just to like shit on that. They're just like, you know what? I was interested in PSA, but then I heard Mark Wilson. Can you walk us through what the allegations are and the reasons that people are not liking Mark Wilson? And what is your thoughts on it?
My thoughts are we should not be airing our history about somebody we're not 100% sure about.
Exactly.
I don't like it. I don't like what's happening with Wes Steffen right now. I trust him implicitly. I picked him as my second in command when I opened CBCS. If it's true, and I don't believe it, but that's okay, right? Then, that's wrong. Very, very wrong. But to be crucified without any proof on social media, especially because you know how it is.
Yes.
It's like, well, it's Donald Trump saying cats and dogs are being eaten when there was nothing about dogs and it was a fake post about a cat, right? And I'm not trying to disparage Republicans or Democrats. I'm just using the most recent example that everybody knows. There are so many memes on the internet right now. That's the only reason I was saying it. But it's hurt him in the election, for sure, at least for now. I mean, he might win.
Well, do you think that it's hurt Mark? Do you think that this has hurt Mark behind the scenes? Do you think that, that the amount of people that, because let's be honest, there has been quite a few people that have come out and stated publicly that they don't agree with the hiring. And then currently we have this lawsuit that's going on, and which both him and West are part of, which also is very interesting because it involves subgrades, which it sounds like that West maybe didn't agree with the subgrades to begin with. And if Beckett is worried about them stealing the subgrade idea, it doesn't make a lot of sense. If you know what I mean.
First of all, how do you steal a subgrade idea?
Exactly.
It's like people saying to me that I stole all of CGC's ideas, which I happen to create many of, along with Mark Haspel and Paul Litch. All of these are honest people. I did work on my personal computer at times, so I had stuff that was done. Sometimes I sent stuff to my personal email so I could edit it, and they would look back and go, "Oh man, he wrote such a bad thing on his, business email." I didn't know. I'm a collector. I'm not, none of us are corporate entities, right? Mark, West, me, anybody, Mark Haspel, Paul Litch. I mean, these guys do it for the love of the hobby.
Yeah,
that's all.
And
if we were working. I mean, Mark just told me I was working 100 hours a week back in the day because I'm complaining that I work 50 to 60 hours a week. And I'm 61. And I said, yeah, man, I'm 61 now. I'm not doing that. I used to sleep on the couch at CGC for 4 hours, get up, wash up in the men's room, and go back to grading or working on PR or working on whatever it needed. People have, and I'm very humbled by it, and honored. But people have called me a diplomat for the hobby, and it once again, I just want us to be happy. I don't want to be a diplomat. I just want to do what's right by everybody.
Yeah.
And, you know, it saddens me. I'm sorry.
Do you think that, Steve, do you
Yeah.
think that this is happening because of who it is? I mean, and what I mean by that is, Beckett being such a big part of the card industry, PSA being such a big part of the card industry. Do you think that it's that type of thing, or do you think that this is them just being like, hey, they knew the rules? Because to me, it feels like it's a card and it's an industry thing. It's like we're not going to let them get our guys, that type of thing.
Well, Mark didn't have a non-compete, if I'm correct, and left. I was told that he was leaving to work with another company that sold comics. And I was also told that fell through. That's when I think he called PSA back. They called me. I spoke with them for about an hour and 10 minutes. I was no longer working for CBCS. This is, only like maybe 7 months ago. I don't know. And I gave them some advice because, once again, I think competition is good for everybody. I mean, but then again, look how CGC went after CBCS. I mean, it was huge. I mean, they kept us out of conventions, right? I mean, which I thought was unbelievable.
It was the shadiest. It was the shadiest shit when they put when they told venues, convention venues, you cannot allow the only competition. And you guys responded with some of the best guerrilla marketing ever. When you guys got that bar in Chicago and brought Roy Thomas in, fuck you, CGC. We're moving the party off of the convention floor.
Yeah. I mean, there's I maybe that's why I keep moving around. Certain corporations let a certain person make a decision that I'm extremely unhappy about. That did not happen with Lone Star, by the way. I really like them, but I couldn't attract the higher players to consign or even buy. And I really.
Nope, we lost him for a sec. He'll come back.
Don't worry about it. So let me just say something for the audience.
Yeah.
And then when Steve comes back, hopefully we'll get a reply on this. So there's been a large grading war over the last 4 years. And if you look at it, there was comic book grading with CGC. There was Beckett, who had just purchased CBCS, prior to that. Then you got PSA, which is just dominating the card industry. But then something happened. CGC decided, we're going to go play in the card game. And that was 3 years ago, I believe, when CGC announced they were going to start grading cards.
Yep.
And they poached. And I don't have this 100% verified, but I have it on good authority. They poached several of Beckett's top card graders to start their little CGC card company. So I think that stuck in the craw over at Beckett. Like, oh, God damn, these fucking assholes, But, that was Beckett bought into CBCS, which was a verified competitor that they tried to keep out of the market. Then CGC said, we're going to go after some of Beckett's business as well as PSA's business. And I think at that point, that fired up the entire kind of the war. And at that point, PSA is looking at, okay, you know what? all you guys are just sitting out there, and we've got all of this PSA money, million a month, coming in cards. I think we're going to go play in both of your sandboxes. We're going to do this comic thing, and if we're going to do this comic thing, they went right after the first person you would call. If you listen to Steve here, they put the welcome mat out. Steve was not going to have it, so they went to the next best thing. They went to West, and they went to Mark, who was not the head grader, but was kind of, I think, presenting himself as such to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at that point,
No worries.
no worries. I filled in the blanks.
Oh, good. Thank you.
So yeah, that was okay. That was correct. So
Yeah.
I was just kind of going over this grading war, which was, Beckett bought CBCS, and that put them into the comic book game. And CGC said, fuck you. If you're going to do that, we're going to fucking poach some of your guys, Beckett, and we're going to start playing dirty. And that's when they started blocking CBCS from conventions, or, CGC started blocking CBCS. They poached a couple of Beckett's card graders, and they started grading cards. And PSA is sitting over here going, wait a second, you fuckers are playing in your, we've got the sandbox. It's the PSA sandbox. If you guys are going to start playing in the card game, and you guys, CGC, are going to play in the card game, we're going to go ahead and play in the comic book game. And they made the call to the first person you call when you want to start a grading company for comic books. And when he said, you can't pay me enough, somebody, they went to the second and third best people.
Millions of dollars, dude. I'm moving my family with me.
Yeah.
And I'm just a working stiff. It's not like I own anything or I'm making huge money anywhere. I mean, I make a great living, and I have a nice collection of art, which, if anything happens to me, I would make sure. Well, I'm in about 50 wills to handle their estate for their family, just like Mark Haspel is in charge of taking care of my material if, God forbid, I pass.
Smart. That's very smart.
You want people watching out. People forget to put that in their wills, and then families fight.
Yep.
And they also say, well, I'm just going to let them split it up. Well, if you don't know comic books and values and the market, and one kid, let's say there's 3 kids, right? One kid's going to get the action one, the other guy's going to get the spawn one, and they keep fighting. I tell people, look, if you're ready to get out, right, and many of people I've dealt with wanted to get out and leave the money in trust for their kids.
Yeah.
I said, well, once it's sold through Comic Link or wherever you decide, that basically you should maybe put it into something you believe, like gold, silver, Coca-Cola stock, something you think is safe and hope is, then you split it up evenly 3 ways with the money. And then it becomes the kids' decision on when and how they will sell, as opposed to, bad blood later going, oh, you got $3 million for the action one, and I only got, $1 million for the Spider-Man one.
Yeah.
Right? You don't want that. It's bad for family.
Right.
Money is it's a powerful deceiver, if you will. And I wish more people would understand that, especially these people, once again, like I was trying to say, that, if there's 10 variant copies and somebody's a Batman fanatic and they have to collect it, and they're young and they don't have the money because comic books are pretty expensive these days, the floppies, if you will. I've never heard that phrase until like, I don't know, 12, 15 years ago. But I want them spending money on, okay, get the 2 covers you love because, they're by your 2 favorite artists.
Yeah.
Instead of 10, and go buy something, you've never checked out or other things you love and read that. It's more like investing, as opposed to caring about the comics, which it should be about the stories, the art, and especially our enjoyment.
Yeah.
Right. So when, let's say it was the early 80s, right? And one of the big publishers, too, were putting out 10 covers or 5 or 3. How many people would have checked out Grimjack, Star Slayer? I mean, all these amazing comics. I mean,
well, and that's
the
the rub, because the industry doesn't want you trying out all of the other books. They want you buying 10 Marvels or 10 DC.
Well, not the industry, the corporation.
Yeah, the corporation. Yeah. Well, that brings me to another thing in the corporations, and you've kind of hinted at this, that the big money has started coming in to the comic book industry in a big way. You see Blackstone buying, putting in buying CGC. You see a PSA, coming in and throwing in their money. These big, and it feels like it's becoming a little bit more, corporate world. And listen, I worked in the corporate world. I know Jesse worked in the corporate world for a long time. I worked in the corporate world. I did space and defense for 15 years, and it got to the point where it's hard to take advice or have a boss that doesn't know what you're doing or know your line of work and tell you how to do your job. And it feels like that's kind of happening in the comic book world as of late in a big way. You see, Blackstone coming in and maybe they want to make more profit than they made the year before, and that's a crazy game to play. You see, the movie companies coming in with Marvel and DC, and the comics themselves are not about comics anymore. It's about money. It's about investing, and it's about keeping them in pristine condition and this type of stuff. It's not about the story anymore. What are your feelings on that and the corporate world getting involved in a lot of this?
It's too late.
You can't unscrew a pregnant lady.
I didn't say that. Anyway,
don't worry, Dennis. We have a nice little thing before the show that says all of Dennis's comments are Dennis's and Dennis's alone.
Yes. And by the way, all of my comments are mine personally.
Amen.
Yep. Not anybody I work with or the people I work with.
Amen.
Or work for, I should say. I am trying to be as honest as possible, but I've been reprimanded here and there by almost every company I've worked with by just shooting my mouth off on things I believe and on what I think is good for the hobby and what I think is bad for the hobby.
Yeah.
I could never imagine, but back then, but now, I'm trying to be a little more less off the cuff to make sure that I'm not putting anyone that doesn't deserve it in a bad light.
Yeah.
I want to be diplomatic, right? Because we should all be. It's what I teach my kids. It's what I believe. I know I'm an old hippie, but I'm a corporate hippie, right? I like money. I don't want to dance in the mud without shoes.
You're like 30 something when they all started driving Mercedes and BMWs.
Yeah.
So would you say that you're technically not walking with blinders on? You're being involved in whatever you feel you should be involved in?
As much as I can.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, like I said, the hobby means the world to me. It has made me money, but because I'd probably be digging ditches without comics. I'm not that great, or selling used cars or whatever. And no offense to people who are doing that, they just don't get paid as much. That's all.
Yeah.
Well, some of the used car salesmen do, but they're
It's not as
ones
fun
that
either.
get a bad name.
Yeah.
But anyway, and I've had a wonderful life. I have so many friends that when I go to a convention, I can't figure out, who I can and can't have dinner with, because I don't like parties more than 8, and I like parties of 6. After that, if Dennis is the 12th person and he's all the way down there from me, we're never going to talk.
It was like that Irish restaurant in Baltimore. We had 20
Right.
people.
Right.
That just came up on my feed. There was 20 people there. And shit, I could only talk to the guy on left and right of me.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
across from you. Right.
And across from you. Yeah, one across
right.
from you.
Right. It's tough. We used to have CGC was very great about this. I had a wonderful idea at Chicago back in the day. I mean, we're talking, 2002, where we had Neil Adams, Maggie Thompson, Gary Colabono. I mean, so many people, Joe Sarno. Legends in our industry, plus newer creators like Stuart Sager. There's a picture on Facebook he posted. He's an amazing artist and wonderful hobbyist. But he's reading an Action 1 at Gibson's in the private room, and with me looking over his shoulder and smiling. It's just fun. Because one of the gentlemen, Wynn, a real true hobbyist, would always bring his restored Action 1 and let people look at it. He wouldn't grade it. But so we had, I think at one point, up to 85 people at these dinners. We had one gigantic dinner when John Burke, rest his soul, he was a phenomenal hobbyist. But he was infatuated with the Larson comics, and he was able to find Larson, who was very, very old at the time. We had him and his family in a ballroom at the Marriott San Diego, and so many people showed up. He was blown away that he was like a superstar for something he collected as a kid and didn't even think about later on in life.
It's very
and
weird.
His family, we need to, while they're still alive, honor the people that were good people and true hobbyists.
Yes.
Michelle Nolan, Maggie Thompson, and I can keep going on. But
it was one of the things that I did when I started my first convention, Detroit Fanfare. We had resurrected Detroit Triple Fanfare into a new brand, and we had the first ever Shell Dorf Awards, and the first response was, "Who the hell is Shell Dorf?" And the people that we brought in Jane Bales to explain why she's so important to our industry. Nobody knew who Jerry was. Nobody, and all of these New Jack flippers that I stole that name, but that's what I call them. Even in 2010, these people were like, Why does this matter? And I'm like, please, you have to understand it is important for our heritage that we honor these people, that we push their
While
names
they were
forward
alive, though, we always honor them after.
after.
Okay.
And we brought in, oh, sorry.
No,
Go
I
ahead.
said, so JC Vaughn and I had this discussion, Jeff Vaughn, one of my dearest friends.
Yeah.
And he, basically oversees the Overstreet
Yep.
price guide and the online. And, he's now, a bigwig there. And a guy who started humbly at Avis. I mean, but he's a wonderful human being. But anyway, we were speaking after my dear friend and somebody who was wonderful for the hobby, John Verzel from Comic Heaven, passed. And we put out, we put an ad in the Overstreet, honoring him. And I said, why after? So the first person we picked was Buddy Saunders. And we gave him the John Verzel Lifetime Award for what he's done for the hobby. But we've also made clear that it was about ethics as well.
Yes.
So somebody can't say, oh, I've been around for 40 years.
Right.
Well,
Sure.
yeah, but your ethics suck. You
Yep.
didn't help our hobby, whatever it is. We've had Maggie Thompson get the award. I think the third one might have been Doug Salipa. But, I mentioned these names, and your audience is probably saying, not all of them, but
Right.
going, who the hell are these people?
Yeah.
Well, they're
Yeah.
the people who taught me how to be a good person.
Yeah.
I
and be
remember
a
when
hobbyist.
we brought in Alan Bellman and
Yeah.
we brought in Ramona Fraden.
Mhm.
Oh, I
and
love
everybody
Ramona
was like,
Fraden.
why aren't you bringing
Wonder
in
Twins.
this person or that person or this? And I'm like, do you realize what Alan Bellman and Ramona Fraden represent to this entire industry?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same with Don
Jack
Rosa,
Kirby there for Jesse.
right?
Well, here's the thing. If you can put this, so this is me at 12 years old, and I was running.
Oh, I saw that picture.
Yeah,
You
and I was
posted
writing
that.
the line for Jack Kirby. And for about 15 years, 20 years, well, probably up to about 2005, 2006, people would say, oh, that's Jack Kirby. Now, most of the people the younger kids come in, they say, hey, is that your grandfather? Is that your uncle, right? Or is that your dad? And so,
Sure, where we would recognize Jack in a second.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So our tradition culture, and it's kind of funny because I never really thought about taking pictures until 91, 92 when Image and Valiant was out. And all those opportunities that we have had having dinners with folks. And if you're in the comic book world, that's really a big part of this business is those dinners and those lunches and having a drink with someone. And everything else kind of just comes in the business world. So you are correct. We need to honor these people while they're alive, because I think that's very important.
I think
Yeah,
that
I mean,
we
they-
do that with
so
this
much-
show. I think that's
Yeah,
very
I was just
important.
about to say that.
Yeah, that's very important
would
with
be-
this show. This show
would
right
be-
right here is
Yep.
is something that we do. It's very important to bring on those people that the audience might not know who they are or how important they've been in this industry. Steve, I don't think Steve is that type of person. I think that Steve, most people in this in that are comic book collectors know who Steve is. I really do.
I don't know anymore, but I mean, I do have young people who pass me going, "Hey, OG."
Yeah, that's what I
It freaks
mean.
Me out, man.
That's what I
But
mean.
that's the thing.
I don't.
is
I feel 17, not.
I would
16.
feel horrible about, when all this controversy starts up and I'm like, oh, I'm going to call my old friend Steve because I haven't talked to him in a year. No, I've been bugging you to come on this fucking show for at least half a year. And it's just, we finally got you right at the peak of this whole thing because you're the most important person for me to want to talk to about it.
Well, but I don't know exactly what's going on with the lawsuits. I don't speak to West or Mark. I don't want to be dragged into this,
Right.
but
Right.
also I don't want to know something and not be able to talk about it.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I truly believe that, West did not do this, and I believe he will actually get, I don't know, what it's like a forensic accountant for computers. I don't know what it's called. Like I said, I'm not bright.
Yeah.
But, he's willing to let people go through his computer.
Yeah.
Right. I have not spoken to Mark. I just, I don't want to get involved.
But it's
I did a
important,
post-
Steve.
I did a post. No, I've done a post, and then I realized I should go back and say this is my personal opinion, not Comic Links
Yep.
or any of their employees.
Yes.
Right. Because if this becomes something instead of nothing, I mean, right now everything is nothing, right? Until a court decides anything, and they might even throw it out for all you know,
Yes.
right? Because if there's no real proof, then the court is not going to side.
Well, and let's face it.
Anyway.
Hold on. Let's face it, because I want to throw this out, and you don't have to comment, Steve, because this is just my opinion on this.
Thanks, my
You're-
brother.
so
I really
you're-
appreciate it.
You're telling me that Beckett is worried that the company PSA, who refuses to have a 9.5 grade in general, is somehow going to poach two people from your comic division so they can have subgrades like Beckett on their brand new comic slab. I'm like, are you fucking?
It doesn't make sense.
They won't even listen to their own customers say, please have a 9.5. 9s are worthless, 10s are gold. Have something in the middle. And PSA won't do that, but you think somehow they're going to poach subgrades?
Yeah.
Get
That's
the
why
fuck out of here with
that's
that.
why I said that it feels like it's a type of thing where it's them being angry, that they took their guys. And that's it doesn't make sense to me. And what's important, Steve, though, is something that you said here that I haven't heard a lot from people that know West and Mark. And you said it. You said they're stand-up guys. You said that they're not out there. I wouldn't think that they would do something like this, and that is important because there's not a lot of people saying that for them right now.
Right, but at the same time, I mean, I'm defending West,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
for reasons I probably shouldn't talk about right now. But the fact that he's being trashed and Mark is being trashed on social media and everywhere else, I mean, until you're innocent until you're proven guilty.
That's the way I should have put it. Yes.
And I will stand by my friends, and I will admit I was wrong. I mean, think about it. Way back, I don't know if you guys remember, Dennis probably does, but I was very good friends with Jason Ewart for many years. And then he got caught trimming books, micro trimming, that was getting past us at CGC because it was so good. The only reason he got caught was that, once again, our community came together on the CGC chat boards and did detective work. And they could show you the before and after pictures because he was doing degraded books. What a moron.
Yep.
And I came on and said, hey, man, this guy was a friend. I'm so disappointed. I'm angry. Jason, get the hell out of comics. I mean, I was, the first person to say, hey, I was wrong. But we need to believe in each other. And once again, innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah, there's something to be said about those message boards again, and I want to talk about this. It's very important how important the community is to come together on this, because shout out to the most recent one, which is 99 Newsstand, Devengers, and all the guys that figured out what was going on with these Mark,
Swapgate.
the Mark Jewelers.
Oh, that one.
Yeah. Yeah, fascinating. Yeah, criminal. Fascinating. It's happened in the card world, and Neo Sports Cards is in the house, and we all know the tales of the people who were micro trimming PSA cards, and they got caught because of the PSA boards.
Right.
And this technology that we have
recently with the coins.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I had so much respect for this man. He always told me he loved my ethics. And I never, would allow that kind of stuff to go on as president of CGC or CBCS. But it happened. It was heartbreaking. And it was bad for their hobby.
Yes.
Very bad.
Yeah.
Well, but
casts a shadow on certification.
and that's one of the things that I say to everybody. I'm sorry to interrupt you there, Steve.
Nah, okay, man.
When you get this, when you get into our little microcosm of comics, and I hear it all the time on Neo's show, PSA for cards is 10 times the volume of all of the comic book grading companies put together. But if you really want to follow the money, it's in the coin verification, because those are the biggest dollars that are out on the field.
Absolutely.
And that's why they can give two fucks about CVCS in the grand scheme of things, because Beckett is a coin company that grades some cards occasionally and bought a comic book grading company just to have the trifecta.
No, Beckett is a card.
Well, I'm sorry?
service. Beckett is a card grading
Okay,
service.
so who's the coin people then?
That's PSA.
That's PSA.
No,
Okay.
Yeah.
NGC and
Oh, CGC, Collectors Universe.
well, yeah.
Am I wrong
Collectors
here?
Universe- No,
So
Collectors Universe
I'm
does
wrong
coin.
then. I just know there's one of the companies has so much money in coin grading that they could give two shits about the rest of the trickle down. Who is
I don't
it?
believe that. I think the 3 or 4 top companies are always trying to get the better leg up
Okay.
and to keep the other people down, which I hate. But I understand that's business,
Yeah.
right? I don't like it when it becomes personal or when it's BS, right? But like I said, it was casting a shadow. That thing casts a shadow on certification. It's why I was so against PGX when they came out. I didn't care that there was competition. I cared that they were ripping people off and saying they were experts when nobody even knew who they were, the people working there. I had some credibility, and Mark had some credibility. People trusted us. We didn't rip people off. We cared about the hobby. But with the fake signatures of PGX and the cracking out of restored books, putting them in unrestored holders, and selling their own pieces is criminal. I never cared if another place came in, but I guess CGC did because they really tried to crush us every way they could. And I think that's probably, in my humble opinion, what's going on with PSA. I do not believe, like you said, that CGC is scared of them. I do believe CGC doesn't want them in the market. Beckett, on the other hand, I believe that they're a little more aggressive about not wanting PSA in the market. But that's just business. I don't care if you're Ford or Chevrolet, right? It's going to happen there. I mean, there's a reason that people spend millions of dollars, millions on TV commercials. It's to outlast and outsell your competition.
Yep.
How much does the shadow that you talk about actually affect the common community of collectors?
I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
I said the shadow that you talk about that is happening. How much does that affect the common collector that does
Huge.
Okay.
The seasoned collector or hobbyist, whatever, will look at Banana Gate or whatever's going on, right?
Yeah.
They get it, right? They're like, let's see how this all falls out, right? They're smart enough not to hurt the hobby. Then we have, once again, social media, where anybody can say what they want when they want it, and the newer people, because the younger generation is online, unlike I mean, I'm not as online as most people,
Right.
but I mean, a lot of my friends they don't do Facebook, Instagram. They only do YouTube for music, or a historical podcast or something, right? But the next generation, which is all that counts, that shadow gives them, worries, and it could actually give them the wrong impression of certain people in our hobby who are good people. I've watched it happen too many times, and we can't cast aspersions. We have to deal with truth and facts.
Shout out to Billy at Economics and Comics who just dropped a super chat. Shout out to Billy. He says, "Hey Steve, looking good, buddy. Hope you are well." So that's Billy at Economics and Comics. And real quick,
you, man. He's a great guy.
Yeah, Steve.
I really like him.
Steve, you brought up the new people in the comics, and Billy doing that just gives me a perfect way to segue, as I like to say it, into giving the flowers to the new people who are holding up that ethics thing. People like Billy, people like Swag, people like 99 Newsstand. There's Swaggle House has been doing such a good job at trying to report the news and also give people an idea of what's really going on. And I think he's done probably the best lately at all the things that have been happening in the grading world.
Swaggle House's real name is
Mickey.
I like him a lot.
Yeah, he's
actually he's a great guy. Oh, that's the one where I saw part of this. We had the lawyer on, right?
Yes.
Paul Lesko.
Yes,
he's. They're all in the chat right now, Steve, and they're watching this. And I tell them a lot that how important they are, but it's even more important when you talk about how so many of these new collectors and these new people of the hobby, how easily they can be taken advantage of. And when there's not people out there like Swag and 99 Newsstand, Avengers, Billy Economics and Comics, these people who are going out on social media, going on YouTube and saying, this is what's happening. Let me show you. Let me give you real, the stuff that I can, give you and explain this to you. And then there's people like Jesse and Dennis, who does this show, who bring on Steve Borock and who bring on these people.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
That's very important. That's very important, and we need more of that. And I hope that continues. And instead of people just going to Instagram or Twitter and doom scrolling and seeing these things, they go when they see these things, they go to people like Swag, they go to people like Billy and look at their videos and say, okay, here's what's going on, because it's a tough world with social media. It's changed so much.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's a double-edged sword, right? Information is knowledge, but misinformation is dangerous, very dangerous. I mean, look at hey, I hate to compare it, but look at what dictators have done throughout history: is used misinformation to turn the people against Good.
How many fingers am I holding up from 1984?
Yeah.
It's the most, but it is. It's how many fingers am I holding up?
Of
3.
course.
Yeah.
Say 3,
Yeah.
or you're gonna keep getting beat.
Yep.
You know.
Yep.
Oh, I got you. Right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
So Brian, in your Facebook messages, I sent you a link to a page. If you could share that, because
Yeah.
I want to tell this story because this is really important on what you said, Steve. Plus, you'll love this story as well.
Cool. I love that.
So a year and a half ago, I met this guy, Jason. Everybody calls him Jay. He's a north side of Detroit guy, and I'm a south side of Detroit guy. So our paths never crossed. We knew all of the same people. So I met him at a show in Flint. We started shooting the shit. He came to my local convention, which just happened last weekend, the Monroe Comic Con. And last year, he had a stack of Golden Age books. And he showed it to one of our good friends, Lauren Becker.
I love Lauren. He's a great friend. Yeah.
Lauren looked through and goes, yeah, I think you have all these priced right. But he wanted to get a second opinion. He's like, he had just met me literally a couple months before this. He was like, hey, Dennis, come on. Can you take a look at these Golden Ages? And I was like, yeah, no problem, brother. So I started flipping through the stack, and I got to this book. And Brian, I don't know if you've got it.
It won't let, for some reason, it won't let me bring it up. It keeps on telling me that
Facebook post.
It keeps on telling me that the link isn't available right now.
Oh,
so I
damn,
don't know why
sucks.
it's doing that.
Facebook.
Yeah. Is it your most recent? Oh, here we go.
No, it's.
Hold on. There we go.
There it is.
Yep.
So it's True Love Pictorial number 11.
Oh, cool. Baker.
And he had it in the middle of this stack, and he had it at $60. And I'm like, bro, you might want to look this one up again. And I picked it. It was the needle in the haystack. And I'm like, yeah, dude, I love this cover. And I'm pretty sure it's not $60. And so we looked it up, and I shared the same screen cap that I showed him. It was a good $1,500, $2,000 copy of this book. And I immediately shared it on Facebook. And one of my friends was like, dude, I'll give him, and I can't remember, I think it was like 1,800 or something. Mm-hmm. And I did the deal with him. I set it up through him. I just said, hey, Jay, my buddy in Ohio is going to do it. He goes, dude, I'm doing that show tomorrow. And literally, he took a $60 book that he was going to sell at that show and turned it into $1,500 or $1,800. I can't remember what he paid
18,
for it.
Yeah.
Or
whatever.
But yeah, I can't remember what I made. That I hooked him up and made the deal. But that's a guy. So he walked up to me. This is just what I want to finish the end of this story. He walked up to me this year. He's like, dude, Dennis, you don't know how many people talk shit about you. Man, ever since I met you, all I hear is, oh, fuck that Dennis Barger. I'm like, what did he do? He's just a fucking asshole, blah, blah, blah. He goes, well, let me tell you what he did for me. He could have easily given me $60 fucking dollars and made $1,400 off of my ass, but he put $1,500 in my pocket.
Right. And
that's Dennis.
Right. It's not just Dennis. It's a lot of us.
Right.
But we have to learn that, it kind of all circles around these pieces unless they're in your collection forever. Right. And then there's people like you just mentioned who don't know exactly what they have. We need to treat them right. And we need to leave meat on the bone for the next person. Every penny shouldn't count. It should be about, once again, the hobby, the enjoyment. And look, why, and I'm making up a number, but I buy a book for $50 because somebody offered it to me. I have had it for 2 years. It jumped up because of some movie or something or whatever it is. And it's now worth $800. A friend of mine wants it. It'd be $400. It'd be $500. I don't need 8. Right. Let him enjoy it or her enjoy it. And, if they decide to sell it, great. I don't care. I just don't like when people come up to, especially sellers, can't you do any better? This is for my personal collection. And they play on us because we love the hobby. And then all of a sudden, you see it pressed and graded on eBay, or wherever, right?
Yeah. And that happens with artists too. Adam Hughes has that classic story.
Oh, absolutely. No, it happens to almost every artist. And I work with a lot of them. They consign to me. But I also don't like certain comic art reps. We charged a straight 10%, right? And we get stupid high prices. And there's some very good art reps out there. So I'm not, lumping everybody together. But when there's an up and coming artist, some guy might come up and say, I can make you a lot of money, but I want 25% of your sales, or I want 10% of your sales, but you're paying for my hotels and my dinners and all of this. And it's wrong. These people give us such enjoyment that they should be treated right. 10% is fair. Very, very fair. I work very hard to make that 10% for the company, but I also work very hard to make that 90% for people that I've helped just recently and have been helping, like John K. Snyder III, Jim Mafood. I'm talking to some other people, and they all say, I don't want somebody taking 25% or 10% and expenses out of my hard work, So if they give it to me, they do nothing.
Yeah.
Right. We agree on the high and the low of what it could sell for. If they don't like it, they don't give it to me.
Yeah.
Because I don't care. I'm not like, oh, give me everything. I'm like, hey man, give me what you want to sell and what you want to do what you want.
I had a really good friend of mine teach me something many years ago, and that good friend is sitting on the far end down there, and he taught me about comic book karma.
You've never called him a good friend before. No, I'm just kidding.
He taught me about comic book karma, and that is very important in this industry. And I've seen him get collections where he could have paid thousands of dollars less and taken these collections and made more than a ton of money off of it and pay thousands of dollars more instead, because he knew that how important your reputation is also in this world, right?
Absolutely. Reputation is everything. And that's one of the reasons I'm worried about all of this on social media with West and Mark until it goes to court.
Well, there's a very good question that's been asked. What pitfalls should PSA avoid being new to comics grading?
I'm not giving them any more information. I gotta be really honest.
Fuck you, PSA.
They called me, and I spoke with a very nice woman, and talked about all sorts of stuff. And she was like, "Okay, we'll speak again," because I turned them down, but I did want to help our hobby.
Yeah.
And but I then wrote an email or spoke to her. I don't remember. But I said, look, I will help consult, but I need to get paid. I said, it takes me away from friends and family while I'm working 50 to 60 hours a week for Comic Link. I didn't ask for any amount, but I was kind of bummed. I didn't get a screw you or a no thank you. It was radio silence.
Nothing worse. Nothing worse.
I would help them get people that were trustworthy and stuff. But you know what? These companies are so big, the major ones, that, right, they know what they're doing.
Yep.
We don't know what we're doing.
Yeah, yeah. I just got some amazing information. I want to shout out another great a group out there that I have a lot of respect for that's doing great things, and that's Cover Price. Matt from Cover Price gave me some information. He said in August, 97.6% of all slab sales were CGC, 2.2% of all slab sales were CBCS, 0.2% of all slab sales were PGX. The same situation in July, basically, almost the exact same numbers. But here's the kicker. 7.7% of sales were slab sales. 92.3% of sales were raw sales. And that's the information that they're getting. And that is a lot.
That's probably correct.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
Look, I tell people not to grade books all the time. I'm like, look, it's not worth it. If they're a consignor and they disagree with me, like I said, the consignors are really the boss, at least when I work with them, right? I know some people who are like, the minute, you sign an agreement, they're like, yeah, screw you. We don't talk to you any again. You don't have anything else to give us, but that's not right. But it is so unbelievable that people think everything should be graded, right? So if I have an Archie 1 and 1.0, I'm going to grade it, right? But if I have an Archie, I'm making up a number,
Right,
253 in VG, and it can only sell raw for $5, why would I spend the money grading? And I don't want people wasting their money. I want people buying comic books or comic art or heck, spend the money on your family.
Sure.
But if you don't do your research and you don't ask the correct people, you will get burned and you won't understand exactly how to do it, and we'll lose 90% of those people.
Yeah.
And Steve, this has been a anecdote that I've been saying for at least 20 years.
That's disgusting. Don't say that in public.
Comic book grading, in my opinion, and of course now I have to roll that back to probably card grading in general, is the two biggest dick slingers in a hobby trying to prove which one has the better. And I used to jokingly refer to my good friend Steve Jeppy and Mile High Comics, Chuck Rosansky. I used to go, yeah, it was it probably only exists because Steve and Chuck were dick measuring which one had the better Action Comics #1, and they needed somebody to prove the point. But I honestly think, it's kind of close to that. Obviously the names have changed, but that's why it still exists, because somebody out there has to say, no, I've got the better one. 99 over here in the chat.
Well, that's why, the registry exists.
Yes.
Yeah.
And why it works, right? It's like when I see some guy in $1 million car. Who needs $1 million car, right? And meanwhile, he's not paying his child alimony. I'm like, well, maybe there's something small about you, as the saying goes.
Yeah. Compensating somewhere. Exactly.
Yeah.
You
small toes,
Like you brought up, you keep on going back to this. Comics are about passion and reading them and all that, which I completely agree with. How important in your mind and the platform that you're on now, and all the platforms that you've been on in the years, how important in your mind are comic book stores still?
Very. If you go back though, they really created a bang for the hobby. I used to have to ride my bicycle if Mr. Fisher's 5 and 10 didn't have Howard the Duck #1. I was smart enough to, take my bike, 2 miles to the 7-Eleven in the next town and buy all their copies and then sell them at the Phil Suling show for, $3 instead of the 25 cents I spent. But that's back in the day, and I'm showing my age again. It's about, the enjoyment we get. I don't love people who come into our hobby only to invest, because it pushes up the prices for the rest of us. And they don't know what they're doing. So sometimes they'll invest, then they lose money, and they sell cheap, and they hurt the market. Right? Look what happened with Jay Perino. It was horrible what these people did to him. He was going to bring in millions and millions into our hobby, and all they could think about was getting extra money from him.
Well, it's like Matthew Perry.
Yeah.
When you hear that, when you hear those depositions about those doctors, it's like, do you remember that oath you took before you got that doctor degree on your wall? I'm pretty sure that meant don't milk Matthew Perry for ketamine. I'm pretty sure that was not in the piece of paper, but it was implicit.
Mm-hmm.
Again, back to reputation. It goes back to your reputation and how important that reputation is. And back
to your ethics, because if you break them, you won't have your reputation.
Yes. And listen, we all break those ethics sometimes. It's also how we come back and say we were wrong, and how we humble ourselves in these situations. We all make mistakes sometimes. It's when you keep making those mistakes that's the problem, though, too. And there's a lot of people out there in this industry that keep making those mistakes, and we allow them to come back. So
whatnot.
Yeah, well, hey, listen, there are new things that are jumping into this world every day, and Whatnot did make some mistakes in the beginning. They've done really well over the last year and get changing those things, and that's how we need to look at a company.
They're not selling $1 million books.
Yes,
and that's where and they're not selling $100,000 books.
No,
right,
no.
Right. So nobody's learning. Right? People are just buying.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Whatnot isn't teaching these people anything except, hey, give me your money.
Right. Well, that's also important for the people who are selling on Whatnot to be those teachers, right? That's very important because
they don't have the time.
Yeah.
They have a limited amount of time. And don't get me wrong, Whatnot's good for certain things. But I don't, walking the convention floor, overhearing people talk that know what they're talking about while you're looking through a comic bin,
you're that fly on the wall.
Teaches you stuff.
Yeah,
that doesn't happen enough.
Well, you know where it does happen, Steve? It happens right here. It happens right here on YouTube.
Well, that's the reason I'm here.
Amen. Right? And we can't thank you
And,
enough for being here.
I'm old. I shouldn't even know what YouTube is. Right?
Well, the crazy part about it is there are actually more experiencers than there are influencers, but the experiencers technically are doing what we're doing. We're talking about how to invest more in our future, bring in more customers.
Make me nuts. If you've ever read, and I missed it last year, first time ever, I've just, I'd moved, new job, crazy, but I always write in the Overstreet price guide, the market report. I really don't talk much about prices because by the time it comes out, I could be very wrong and I don't want to look like an idiot, which I might anyway. But anyway, I always thank Bob, Steve Jeppe, J.C. Vaughn, Usman, Amanda at the beginning. And then I write whatever I write. But at the end, I write, if you have read my, market report before, you can stop. I said, this is for the new people or the people who are learning. You buy what you love and you can afford. You don't go into debt or heavy debt. I mean, if
Right,
you
yes.
owe somebody $100, it's cool. I'll pay you next month. And don't get me wrong, I do time payment deals.
Right. Yeah.
Plus, I don't go into heavy debt for art I want, right? But at the same time, I say, look, it's because you have to just enjoy the hobby, and the reading the comic books, seeing the movies, dealing with your friends, making new friends, teaching the next generation. Because if there's a real heavy recession in our country, or God forbid, a depression, you're holding on to something that's worthless. It's a comic book.
It's heating fuel. It's heating fuel.
Yeah, I mean, it's tulips.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep. For all you history fans, that's a great point for sure. For sure. So, listen, we are almost 2.5 hours into Steve. I want to thank you for coming on.
Yeah, I know. That's why my computer went dead.
I know.
Plugged in. I didn't know, but I love doing this. And until somebody shuts me up, which I should, I'll keep going as long as you guys do.
Well, that's
I don't want to bore the people that are watching. And,
yeah.
And if you want me in again, maybe we should save stuff
Yeah.
for another time. But
if there's any last minute questions in the chat, let's throw them in there real quick. Let's make sure we get every juicy little question out as we wrap up slowly. I just want to thank Steve for coming on, man. I love you to death. You are one of my favorite people in this industry. There's never a time where you and I don't see each other on a con floor or outside and we don't give each other a huge hug and a kiss on the cheek. And I hope that never changes.
But it won't, as long as you don't, or I don't.
Well, here's a record for you. So Steve has been on for 2.5 hours. Dennis has only talked 23 minutes.
No way.
Yeah, that is a record.
That means I talk way too much.
Yeah, I need to get you.
I can't believe that.
Yeah.
Well, also very important to know is that Comic Link is a great service and a great place to go buy comic books, art, and also if you're looking to sell some of those comics and art, make sure you guys check out Comic Link. Steve,
people can reach out to me through Comic Link. I'm on the page where it shows how to contact. They can also contact me directly through my email, which is really easy to remember. It's my first initial S and my last name, Borock, BOROCK, @comiclink.com. And you don't have to call to consign. You can call to ask advice. I am a hobbyist. Unless you're an investor only, and I can tell within 10 minutes.
Right, sure.
Call, but I've stayed on the phone with somebody who asked me a question for an hour and a half, teaching them about the hobby, because they were like, should I buy this? And I'm like, no, not for that price, and then we become friends. And they're, like I said, I've had many mentors and really good ones. I miss Jerry Weiss so dearly. I can't tell you. But anyway, these, this is what's important. I will talk to any real collector at any time. I give out my personal cell phone number to them. That's kind of unheard of, Yeah.
Yeah. And there's been a lot of people in the chat that have, said this similar thing that Billy is saying right now at Economics of Comics. He says, I just want to say Steve is the best in the business. He has always helped me personally with many things without asking for anything. He is the GOAT of comics. So you've had a lot of people in the chat say the same thing, and which is amazing.
That's incredible. Thank you
Yeah.
all. I mean, once again, very humbling.
Steve, there is a very interesting question, and you brought it up very early on. How do you guys protect from shill bidding?
Okay, so what we do, well, you know what? I don't know if I want to give away any secrets that Josh wouldn't want me to.
Yeah.
So maybe after I speak with him, he'd let me tell you, but I know that we track all sorts of IP addresses and names of people who are bidding. So if Jeffrey Borock is now bidding, they might look into it.
Yeah.
Or they, because there's a lot of Joe Smiths out there, right?
Yes.
You can't track that, right? But if you go on another site and see that Jeffrey Borock got a bump in grade and is now selling it himself.
Listen, people, you're hearing stuff I've said before.
Right. I mean, I've had people ask me, well, if it's going low, can I bid? I said, no. I said, go somewhere else. Go to Golden. I don't care. I wouldn't be here at Comic Link if I didn't believe in the ethics of the company and the ethics of the man who was so smart to create this and has become a brother. Family. Like I said, my daughter calls him Uncle Josh. It's wonderful. I'm finally getting to work with a brother since I've worked with Haspel and West. And I said when I was at my comic shop, and I love Buddy, Judy, and Conan. And the people who work there. Este's amazing. I don't think they can do anywhere near what we do, but they're honest. And Buddy was one of the first in fandom, the Texas Trio. So I go to OFCON every year, which nobody knows about.
Oh, yeah.
Well, not nobody, but you know what I mean.
Right.
It's like being back as a 13-year-old. People are just talking about comics. I'm learning from all these guys in their 70s, 80s, 90s. And they only do that show. Buddy Saunders supports that show so much that I go, but I will not set up. He has done so much for our hobby. I will let him have that show. That sounds really pretentious.
Yep.
I do it out of respect and love.
Yep. Oklahoma first weekend of October, ladies and gentlemen.
Yep. That's right. I'll be there. I'm there as a hobbyist, although I am buying and taking consignments if anyone wants to bring them to me or reach out to me ahead of time so they don't have to pay postage and all that. Or they want just a grade on a comic or a restoration check. I'm happy to do that because that's what people have done for me. But I learned so much history there. And it's like I said, it's like the old days. Some guy would leave his table and it's a table, not a booth. And he's like, turns to the guy next to him and he's like, can you watch my booth for a minute? And he's like, yeah, nothing gets stolen. Not that things don't get stolen. I'm just saying that it's completely like the old days.
Yep.
It's really
So
great.
Steve,
let
me ask you one more. Let me ask you one more question. So you're the first person that ever said anything to me about video game grading. You and I had a long discussion about Marvel Fleer way before it all blew up. You are always one giant leap ahead of where a lot of the fringe market is.
I guess it could be almost like inside insider trading, but without the thievery.
Right.
I talk to so many people, and I get, you know, advice,
Right.
or I get, hey, so and so's opening up this, you might want to check it out, or have you seen the movement recently on this? I hear certifications coming. So I probably have a little bit of an edge as opposed to being really smart. Um, sorry, it's just the way it is. But nobody has a crystal ball.
Yep.
That's all.
Yep.
My final question is Texas heat or humidity that you're in now?
Oh, no! I left Texas. I
No,
hated
no,
it.
but
Yeah,
you're
I
in
know.
Florida
I
now.
don't hate anybody.
Yeah. So what I'm
Uh,
saying is the humidity now that you're in, what do you prefer, Texas or where you're in now?
It's kind of completely different. I'd rather be here, especially during the winter. I mean, Texas is, I believe, at times a very antiquated state. I mean, they've tried to vote to secede from the Union, right? I mean, great. You have this power grid that screws you guys up all the time. You deny climate change while people can't get to work because you don't have enough salt to put on the roads when there's a quarter-inch of snow. They do not respect women's rights. They were voted Dallas was voted the most dangerous highways in America, not just because of the drivers, but because of the guns. I'm a hippie. I'm sorry. I grew up in New York where we did not know race, creed, or color. We knew good and bad. And I just couldn't handle Texas. But I loved working with Buddy, Conan, and Judy and the crew. And I wanted to work remote. And Conan said it shouldn't be a problem because all I need is a computer, pen, paper, phone, right? I make I make my flights, I book conventions, I talk, email with people, talk to people, I grade comics inside. I don't need an office for any of this. And it actually saves my consigners money when they send it to me instead of to Maine and then to CGC.
Amen.
And back. So we save them one-way shipping and insurance, which on decent stuff is a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Your people are probably tired of hearing me talk. We've been on and ask Dennis. We've stayed on the phone for 5 hours at a time.
Too many a times. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to hold you to coming back here, not just once and not just twice. We'd love to have you back as many times as you're willing to come back, Steve, because you've been a great guest and we love hearing you talk, man. So thank you.
Well, I loved hanging out, talking with y'all. I mean, it's great. And if I can get a message across that helps at least one person, I don't know if we talked about the Hero Initiative, though. And it's
we didn't.
We need to talk about the Hero Initiative.
Really
Let's do it.
I asked to talk about.
Yes.
The Hero Initiative is the most important charity in our hobby, not the most important charity, right? But it's a real charity. And I am on the board that helps raise money. But I get to work with Mark Wade, Walt Simonson. It's great. So I'm not going to complain. But if everybody in our hobby gave $1 over the line on the website you're showing in our hobby, $1, right? Think about how many people that came before us as creators that are broke and need hospitalization, need their mortgage.
William
paid.
Mesner Loeb's here in
Yes.
Detroit. They've literally saved his life.
Well, I wouldn't say we did it, but
Well,
we
I want to talk about two things about the Hero Initiative. One man that I thought did the most for me to learn about the Hero Initiative was the late great George Perez, and he.
Well, yeah. I mean, he rocked it.
Yeah. And he would do amazing things. And one of the most amazing things that I saw him do is he would do $5 sketches. And he would say, put the $5 in the bucket for the Hero Initiative and anything else that you think you want extra in there. And he would sit there at his table with the biggest grin on his face, talking to people and sketching $5 or whatever you want to give to the Hero Initiative every con I saw him in. And that's the type of thing that I love. And then the second thing I want to talk about is this right here. We talked about this when Brian Pulido was on, because Brian Pulido was a big part in the very first.
The 100 for a project. I was involved with the first.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what we talked about, Steve. And that first project was fantastic. It was one of the greatest things in comics. And they're going to be doing a new one with the Superman 100 project, which is amazing. And I really think that if you guys have never heard of the 100 project, whether it's the Superman 100, the Hulk 100, the Amazing Spider-Man, or the Ultimate Spider-Man 100, go check them out. They're amazing, and get involved in the Superman 100 project that's getting ready to go down.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, I really like it. I collect original art, so that is kind of in my wheelhouse. But what I, used to do was bid in those auctions, and I would win too much because at the beginning people didn't understand.
Yeah.
And what I did with a bunch of them is I gave them to other people for the same price I got them for, and some I held, and the ones I held that I still don't have, I did charge extra money because, hey, I want to get interest on, the 6 year, 7 year hold.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
But either way, it's fantastic. But somebody, my eyes went to the side here. Somebody said, how much of the monies go to the charity? It's an amazing question. It's what I ask and what I, try to confirm with any charity. Remember with the Wounded Warriors at the beginning? It was like 99% goes to me. It's like,
it was terrible.
Excuse me, horrible. So we have only 2 employees. They do not earn huge money.
Right.
It's Jim McLaughlin, who runs it, and Christina, who is the second in command, a wonderful person, has a wonderful husband as well. So does Jim, has a wonderful wife, kid, and all that. But I digress, as always. The office that we have is the coffee shop around the corner, right? I would guess, Jim would be the one to answer this, that 90-something% goes to the creators or to setting up at conventions.
Yeah.
But I think we stopped setting up at conventions that charge us.
Right.
Because that means they don't care about the hobby as well either. People like Mark Nathan, Shelton Drum, Brett Carreras, those people understand and are 100% behind it, where I don't think the big boys care enough, and they don't want to comp us anymore, not just a table, but they used to comp a hotel room, a flight, whatever. And it's just a big grab for money, and it shouldn't be.
Right.
Anyway.
Well, because here's the thing, because when you hear that, this is just the mindset these corporate conventions now don't see the benefit in that, except for they don't understand. Some of my best friends in the industry, they will go to a convention they wouldn't normally go to sit at the Hero Initiative booth and sign for free, which is an added draw to your convention. And they are such short-sighted, they don't understand $500, $1,000 in hotels and flights gets them a George Perez signing for $5 sketches that makes your convention look 10 times more amazing than it did before that happened.
And
It's great because sorry, I didn't
no
mean to
no
talk
no
over you.
well, I was gonna say, speaking of those creators, we just lost one of the creators who's on the site, Carl Moline, who recently passed away, and he says they really helped save my life. And he just recently passed, unfortunately.
It's what we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I mean, feed the poor, house the homeless, cure the sick. I mean, these are just basic human things. It has nothing to do with our hobby. I just happen to be involved is because these people have made me gave me so much enjoyment in my life and have made me a living. I can't think of who else I should be giving back to at this moment.
Amen.
Right. But so I've actually put myself up on eBay to have lunch, a few people to have lunch with me or one person to have lunch with me that want to learn more about grading and restoration or the history of the hobby.
That's cool.
And I mean, look, I'm not George Perez. Believe me, nobody's paying, $2,500 to have lunch with me. But if I can make them $500, I do. It's very important. And we should all be doing what we can for this hobby. And it's great charity of ours. And I'm not trying to disparage any other charity. I really believe in St. Jude's. I've done the comic art auctions for them in New York and Chicago. It's a great charity. I love St. Jude's. But there's so many out there that are just 10% to the people and 90% to the CEOs.
Yeah.
But I wanted to thank you for letting me talk about this because that's the only request I had when I was talking with Dennis, that I really wanted to talk about the Hero Initiative.
Well, we love the Hero Initiative over here, and we're willing to talk about it anytime. So before we end the show, and we're going to end the show, and stick around, Steve, because when we end it, we want to say goodbye to you backstage. But I want to ask, what are your plans? Are you going to Baltimore?
Oh, yeah, I do not miss Baltimore. Mark runs a great show. Mark Nathan and his wife, Shelley, fantastic people. But what's cool is that my other favorite shows are OVCon and Charlotte and Virginia. Brett's show in Virginia, Brett Graris. But Mark looked at what Shelton Drum, another wonderful hobbyist and fantastic friend of mine. Actually, I handled his Savannah pedigree collection for him, which was an honor. Mark said he told Shelton this, because we should all get along. He said, I'm going to start a convention in Baltimore, which doesn't compete with Shelton like Wizard did that time and got really screwed.
1 week apart.
Right? That was crazy. Sometimes we should talk about that story, but not tonight. But anyway, he told Shelton, I'm going to, run my convention like you. Right? I mean, Shelton was angry. He was like, perfect. We're both hobbyists.
Yep.
And they turned small shows into, 2 of my 4 favorite shows, besides Con and the VA Comic Con.
That's awesome.
And I love Mike Carbonero's shows. I just haven't been there in a while. but I spent so many years working those shows or buying at those shows.
And you just have to also just admire Mark Cavanaro still alive and go to meet him.
It's about the fall at Studio 57 in the documentary. I mean, this guy was trying to get in, and they're wheeling him, away, and he's broken almost every bone in his body, and you just see him go. I mean, he is a wild personality.
Yeah.
He saved the New York convention scene when Greenberg crashed it. Anyway, I keep going on because we keep.
Let's save it.
We can do it. We'll save it for next time.
Everybody, I'm sure I bored the hell out of half.
No, dude.
This was a great episode.
The viewers are still in, so you didn't bore them to death.
Yeah. And thank you, everybody that watched. If you did hit that thumbs up, subscribe. If not, go check out Comic Link. Go donate some money to Hero Initiative, and be on the lookout for the next time. Be good to each other. There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Stick around for a second, Steve. We'll see you guys next time. Adios.
Thank you all for turning in, and thank you all for having me.
Yeah.
All right.